Right, guys, welcome back, and we are today looking at the third and fourth key knowledge dot points from this second outcome in Unit 3, and that is all about something called motivation strategies. So here is our study design, and here is what we're looking at today, and that's why it's 3 and 4, because it's the third and fourth key knowledge dot points. If you look at those, you can see they're both about motivation strategies. So we combine them both into the one video. Now, what is this one all about? Look, motivated employee is going to perform better, which means the business performs better. We've talked about this in the past. And if the business is performing better, it's going to lead to an increase in the competitiveness of the business, which is what we're always aiming for. Now, if you are doing this video after we've covered the second key knowledge dot point, which was motivation theories, one of the key things I'm going to talk about first is the importance to differentiate between the two. So chances are you've already got some notes we've already talked about in class motivation theories. So now we're looking at motivation strategies. Okay, absolute difference. And I'll get onto that a little bit more in a second. Now, depending on the situation, a manager might consider implementing one or more of these 5 strategies that we're going to look at today. And if you go back to there, you can see those 5 that are in green on the screen a second ago are the ones that are listed in the study design. So we have our script of 5 strategies, okay? So performance-related pay, career advancement, investment in training, support, and sanction. So that's ultimately what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to doubly emphasize this. So you've just looked at motivation theories, or if you're doing this early in the week, we're going to look at that in class later in the week. Whichever way around you're doing it, what I'm saying is once you've got notes on both of these two things, do not confuse the two. Okay, so we've got our motivational theories, which is Maslow, Locke and Latham's goal setting, and then Lawrence and Noria's 4 drive theory. And then what we're looking at in this video, those 5 motivational strategies that I just mentioned. This is really, really important. 2020 exam, section A question 4, you can see the question there. Evaluate 2 different motivation strategies, blah, 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 blah. As it turns out, a lot of students wrote about motivation theories. And if you do that in one of these questions, you're going to score 0. A couple of years before that, 2017, again, it asked to describe an appropriate motivation strategy. And once again, a lot of students went down the motivation theories route, and again, you're going to score 0. So really, really important. It happens every year in the SAC as well. Make sure you've absolutely clear. You've got motivation theories, motivation strategies. Do not confuse the two, whatever you do. Now, how we're going to arrange this content, because there's 2 key knowledge dot points, as you saw, and there's quite a bit of stuff that covers within there. So basically what we're going to do here, so for each of those 5 strategies that I just mentioned, we're going to do, I'll explain what that strategy is so that you have an understanding of what the strategy is, and then you could describe or explain what they are. Then we're going to look at the advantages of using that particular strategy, first off from the perspective of the business, and then from the perspective of the employees. And then we're going to do the same with the disadvantages, the business and then the employees. And then the 4th key knowledge dot point was more on this last point here, the effectiveness of using that strategy as a long-term motivator and as a short-term motivator, because as you'll see, some of these strategies are better at one or the other of those. So they work better in the long term or better in the short term, or as it turns out, not particularly at all. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cover that 5 times. So we're going to go through that process for each of those 5 motivation strategies. So look, we're going to cover a fair bit of content here. So make sure you organize your notes really, really well using subheadings and stuff, so that when you come to learn this, it's kind of nice and clear and easy to follow from your notes. Okay, so that's really, really particularly important, because it's kind of compartmentalized knowledge, as you'll see, but just make sure in your own notes, this is nice and clear and easy to follow. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first of those strategies, performance-related pay. Okay, PRP I'll call it from now on, but again, don't use PRP in your answer in an exam question unless you've said performance related pay to begin with, and then PRP in brackets. So PRP, so basically a financial reward to employees when their work reaches or exceeds a set standard. Okay. Generally speaking, employees are motivated by PRP because it links their performance to increased remuneration, increased pay. So in other words, if they perform well, they can personally benefit financially from doing so. So if they produce better work, better quality work, they earn more. Simple as that, pretty straightforward. Now, there's different ways that you can kind of set this up in the business. So I'm just going to briefly talk about each of these. So first off, a pay rise. Pay rise, nice and simple. A permanent increase in the employee's salary or hourly wage rate. So in other words, you're earning $15 an hour and you work particularly well and they go, okay, I'm going to increase your wage to $16 an hour, 17, whatever it might be. Nice and straightforward, a pay rise. I think we understand that concept. A bonus. Now, this is a one-off payment, which is made for meeting a set target. So that's provided in addition to the employee's regular salary or wage. So it might be you do a particularly good piece of work and you get a $1,000 cash payment as a one-off, okay? But your regular hourly wage or your regular salary does not change. It's just a one-off payment. Commission, and this, don't confuse commission and bonus because they do work differently. So commission is provided to employees for selling a good or a service usually. And it's usually paid as a percentage of the price of the good or service being sold or total sales you make in a month. So when I worked in recruitment for 10 or so years before teaching, a large part of what I earned was actually commission payments. My actual base salary, my regular salary each month was actually really quite low. So most of what I actually was paid each month was based on the commission. So how many people I recruited, how many people I found jobs for. Real estate agents works the same thing. A lot of sales jobs, car sales, whether it's used cars or new cars, most sales jobs, there's a commission linked to it. So with a real estate agent, often their base salary, so the regular payment they get each month, week or month, however they're paid, is actually really, really low. Like super low, to the point where probably not even a livable wage. Nearly all of what a real estate agent earns usually is commission based on how many houses they sell. So it'll be a percentage. So if you sell so many $1,000s worth of houses in a given month, you might get 1% of that or 2% of that or whatever the agreement is. Okay. So paid as a percentage of your sales is how that one is usually structured. Profit sharing. Now, this is where employees receive a percentage of the profit, pretty straightforward. So the business might say, okay, at the end of the year, we've made $100,000 profit, and a portion of that might be shared out amongst the employees. And then finally, we've got a share allocation scheme. Now, this one can only happen in a company. This cannot happen in a sole trader or a partnership because we don't have shares. So this is where employees are given the opportunity to access shares, maybe at a discounted price, or actually they're given shares, okay? In recognition of high performance. Remember, all of this is about performing well. So if you perform to a certain level, if you reach certain targets, if you reach certain goals, we'll either give you some shares in the business or we'll give you some discounted shares, for example, okay? So that's how performance-related pay can work. Now, so the next part of this process I said before was looking at the advantages. Okay. So what are the advantages to put it in place a performance related pay scheme? So first off, from the business's perspective. Now, in some jobs, it's possible to make direct links between remuneration, remember pay, and business objectives. Okay. So if particularly, like I said, those sales jobs, if there's numerical targets involved, you have to sell $10,000 a month or $500,000 a year or whatever it might be, it's actually quite easy because it's all numerical. The targets are very clear and black and white. It's actually easy to base a PRP scheme on that. Another advantage for the business is that this can be used to motivate a large number of employees all at the same time. So in other words, you have one scheme set up for your entire sales team. Sales team might be 2 or 3 people. It might be 100 people. It might be more. But you have one scheme in place and it acts to motivate all of them at the same time. And a third advantage, I'd say, look, it can increase motivation really, really quickly because, you know, your employees they know what they've got to achieve, and they can get that, they can earn that extra money pretty quickly. So if it's on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or whatever, you know, the return can come back to them pretty quickly if they hit those targets quickly. Now, from the employee's perspective, very simple, they gain personally, financially, if they meet those targets. It's as simple as that. So, as an employee, if I hit the targets that are set for me, I can earn extra money. Pretty straightforward. Now, disadvantages from the business's perspective. It can lead to shortcuts being taken by employees. So, for example, if for example, you're setting your PRP based on, for example, number of units produced, you might find employees taking shortcuts, which means perhaps quality might suffer just to produce more in order to reach those targets and where they're going to get paid more money. That makes some sense. Second one, it can also create some internal competition, which becomes counterproductive. So you end up your salespeople on the same team are kind of competing against each other, and that can lead to situations where they're too focused on competing against each other, and sometimes things happen that are not for the good of the business, but might be for the greater good of one of the employees. It can also create a bit of a negative culture if you've got too much competition between your employees rather than all working together than competing against each other. It's just something you need to manage and be aware of, and just manage that carefully. It can increase your wage bill significantly. Now, that one I'd be careful with, because remember, we're only paying out this performance-related pay in return for something. So in other words, if your employees sell more, they might get a percentage of those sales, but you're not going to be paying it out unless we see that return to the business. So that one, be a little bit careful. You have to be careful with how you word that one, because it's not like, you know, you're not going to see any increase in performance and then still be paying people. You're only paying people if they're performing better. So really the overall difference should be in the business's favor. So just be careful with that one. Rewards might need to be constantly increased to maintain motivation. So if people are used to earning a certain amount of money through their PRP over a period of time, it can kind of in the long run no longer motivate them. So you might need to actually increase the levels of PRP to maintain that motivation. And finally, it's actually really difficult to apply to a lot of jobs. It's hard to apply PRP to many types of jobs, really. Teaching would be one of them. Like, how would you, theoretically, if you wanted to say, look, we're going to pay teachers based on their performance, in other words, how good of a teacher they are. Think about it. How would you actually set that scheme up? On what basis are you going to judge a teacher's performance? Very, very difficult to do. We might actually talk about that in class a little bit to kind of explain that further. That the government has tried in the past to introduce PRP for teachers. And look, I'm kind of all in favour of that if they could come up with some kind of scheme or system that made sense and that would work and is equitable. But it's actually very, very hard to do for teachers. So yeah, there's a lot of jobs out there where it's actually very hard to set sort of quantifiable targets on which to set up a PRP scheme. The disadvantage from the employee's perspective, kind of touched on this one before, but over a period of time, the rewards may stop being a motivator. So in other words, if you're achieving a certain level of rewards all the time, like I said, that the business might need to increase them to maintain the motivation, or over a period of time, often people's life situation changes and no longer is money the main motivator for them. In the long run, maybe people are motivated by things in their career other than just how much money they earn. So it doesn't work for everybody in that long term. Okay, final part of this jigsaw puzzle for PRP, the short and the long-term impact. So what you need to be able to do is describe the short-term impact to motivation of using PRP, and then flip that for the long term as well. So in terms of short term, generally speaking, it's a really good tool to use, okay? Because lots and lots of employees are going to be motivated to improve their performance to receive those immediate financial rewards. If you think about it, that probably would apply to you if you have a job. So it doesn't work for everybody, but mostly speaking, this would apply to most people. So most people are going to be motivated if they know that over in the short run, if they produce better work, they can earn more money. Most people are going to work to produce that better work and put more effort in. In terms of long term, can be limiting. As I was just talking about previously, there does come a point for a lot of people where money is no longer the main motivator. Other aspects of the job become important to that person, so the money kind of no longer does it for you. And also the other negative is that idea about the internal competition. Okay, that can become really, really draining for some employees, and they don't enjoy working in this environment where every day you're coming to work and you're competing with all the people around you. Okay, so again, another potential negative in the long term. All right, now, second of the 5 strategies, career advancement. Okay, so career advancement basically is just promoting people to positions with greater responsibility or authority within the business. Okay, so we're talking about promotions, offering people more challenging roles. And this is all about motivating people who want more responsibility, maybe more respect, more status, more authority, all that sort of stuff in the workplace. And some people are absolutely driven by that kind of stuff. Now, for this to be effective, the business has to have a few things in place. Okay. First off, a policy of promoting from within whenever possible, so that employees know that they can progress within the business. So what I mean by promoting from within, in other words, when there's senior jobs coming up, trying to promote from the existing team. So promoting people from within the team for, senior positions, supervisor positions, managers, rather than bringing them in from outside of the business. Remember back to year 11, if you did Year 11, internal, external recruitment. So I guess what we're saying here is, putting it in the context of that language, a promotion of a policy rather of promoting internally wherever possible. Okay, so if employees who are motivated by career advancement, if they constantly see management roles being taken by people that have come from outside of the business, that's not going to be so motivating. But if they can see there's positions available in the future and people generally from within the business are getting those positions, it can act as a motivator for them. Second thing you need to have in place in making sure the positions are advertised clearly within the business, so employees know about these opportunities. They're not going to be motivated by things they don't know about, so it's really important that they're aware that these positions are there when they come up. So however you need to do that within your business, just make sure that the employees who, could potentially fill these positions know about the positions. And then finally, making sure that employees know what criteria they need to meet to actually move on to that next position. And part of the development and training for those employees can include, sort of closing those, ticking off those boxes and making sure they're ready. People need to be aware of, if I'm in this position now, what do I need to be able to do? What knowledge and skills do I need to have when the next management opportunity comes up? What do I need to be able to do to make the most of that opportunity when it becomes available? So it's important that the employees know what they need to do. Okay, now again, advantages from the business's perspective. Helps with staff retention. So in other words, you're more likely to keep people within the business if they know that there's that goal of, senior positions they can be promoted to. And again, look, if people keep seeing, positions going to external people and they're looking for career advancement, that's one of their key goals within the business, and they might start looking outside the business to progress their career because they'll feel that, they're going to hit a ceiling and there's nowhere for their career to go with your business. So if you're doing this the right way and promoting from within where you can, there's more chance that you're going to retain more of your good people. Secondly, promoting from within the business is usually cheaper than the external recruitment option. Again, thinking back to year 11, if you did it, external recruitment is generally a more expensive option than recruiting from within. External recruitment, you have the cost of advertising a position. When you're bringing in from someone from outside of the business, there's training costs that you might not need to incur if you're bringing in someone from inside the business. If you're going to use recruitment agencies and that sort of thing, like what I did before teaching, definitely there's a much, much higher cost. So yeah, generally it's a little bit cheaper to promote from within. And also, it means that the investment in people is not wasted. So, in other words, if you're training all of your staff really, really well and you're investing in your people, investing time and money in training them to be the best that they can be, the last thing you want is for them all to go and leave, potentially join a competitor, and that competitor then basically reaps the rewards of your investment in your people. Okay. So, again, that's linked to staff retention. The more people you retain, the more of the investment into those people you keep within the business, and you reap rewards of that down the track rather than other businesses, particularly your competitors. Advantages from the employee's perspective. People are going to feel valued and therefore happier at work. So if you're promoting from within, people are progressing their careers through the business. They're going to feel valued. They're going to feel part of things. And again, they feel happier. If they're happier, all of that good stuff follows. They're going to produce better work. Customer services can be better. Everything else follows from there. And it can also provide some direction for the employees. So they can kind of, if employees come in, when they join the business, they can kind of map out a career within the business. They can kind of, so if you join as a graduate trainee, for example, you can kind of map out the career. Okay, this is the next position. That one can lead to this position, which can lead to this. And you can kind of see the long-term career growth that could be possible within the business that you're a part of already. Disadvantages from the business's perspective. This strategy can be limited somewhat in respect of there's less senior positions in any business than there are lower down. Think about it. At the bottom level, you've got so many people. Then in each level you go up in the business, there's less and less positions. There's less managers than there are workers, and then there's less senior managers than there are middle managers, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a pyramid. So I guess the reality is, if you've got 10 people in your team and that's managed by one person, not all 10 of those people realistically are going to get that one management job when it becomes available. So there is that to think about. And that will vary between business to business. Some businesses will have more management opportunities available. It might mean moving to a different part of the business. But realistically, any business is, as you kind of climb the ladder, there are going to be less positions available. Something else you need to be careful of is promoting people beyond their ability. So while we want to, train people up and progress their careers and retain them within the business, you don't want to do that at the expense of promoting people into positions which they're not ready for, because then you're setting them up for failure. And also from the business point of view, you've got people doing jobs they're probably not suited for or not ready for. So that's something you need to be kind of careful of. And again, coming back to this idea, and there is a bit of repetition through some of these, this idea of creating this internal competition. If everybody's chasing, you've got 10 people chasing one management role, you've got to manage this culture of internal competition. You can manage it in such a way to kind of keep it healthy, but I've been involved in many, many businesses where it actually becomes quite unhealthy. And people end up leaving because of it. It just becomes quite an uncomfortable place to work for some people. So just be aware of this, the competition that you're creating internally in your business when everybody's chasing the same goal. Now, from the employee's perspective, I guess one limiting factor here is not all employees want extra responsibility. Some people just want to go to work. They want to clock in, do their job, go home, get paid their money and not think about it. Okay. This isn't for everybody, which is great, because if everybody wanted to advance their careers, we've already said it's probably not going to happen for everybody. So it's good that there are some people that are just happy to go to work and not look at this. But yeah, from the employee's perspective, some employees are not going to want this, so it's obviously not going to work as a motivator for those people. And then the second one, they're coming back to this culture of internal competition. If we've gone through this process where, okay, so we've got a team of people, the manager's left, so the manager's spot became available, and we went through a process and one person in the team was successful in securing that position. Anyone else who went for that job and did not get it, particularly if it was someone else from within their team, they lost out on the opportunity. That can actually be really demotivating. And to be honest, often when that happens, you'll find you're going to lose that person or those people. They then might start to look outside the business, particularly if they felt that they were actually, rightly or wrongly, that they were a stronger candidate for that management role than the person that ultimately got it. So yeah, can be really, really demotivating for people, particularly who think they've lost out on a job that they should have got themselves. Long and short term, look, career advancement, generally speaking, is a really, really good long-term motivator. Okay, employees generally like to feel they're working for a business that encourages promotion and advancement through the hierarchy. And if you are the type of person that's motivated by those things, you're much more likely to stay within that business. Not so useful as a short-term motivator, not completely useless, but not as useful, really, because the process of promotion, can be quite a lengthy one. You're not going to come in on day one and then, and on day two get the next level job, and the next week get the next level. This process of career mapping and moving through the different levels in a business, it can be a years long process. So hence why long term it kind of tends to suit. It can have a good impact on short-term motivation if you need employees to quickly take on some extra responsibility. So by giving them maybe some extra responsibility in their own job, or maybe giving them a temporary promotion if somebody's away or something, then that can be good in the short term. But generally speaking, we look at this as being more of a long-term motivator, just because it's a long-term process, advancing your career through a business. Third one, investment in training. So this is basically where a business is allocating resources with the aim of improving the skills, knowledge, and ability of its employees. Okay, so whatever job you end up doing, you're going to end up going through some kind of training. So look, very simply, this strategy is used to provide employees with skills, knowledge, and expertise needed to perform their job at a better level than what they are currently doing. And it motivates people by providing learning opportunities for people to develop their skills or abilities. Simple as. And most people like to get better at whatever they're doing in life. So that's what provides the motivation behind that one. Now, it includes on and off the job training. I'm not going to talk about that one because that's actually the next key knowledge dot point when we kind of analyze training in a little bit more depth. So for the time being, I would just have that in your notes, on and off the job training. And then once we've covered that particular key knowledge dot point, you would have kind of some more meat to add to those bones. Now, advantages from the business's perspective. Improvement in skills. So if you're training people and you're improving their skills or improving their abilities to do their jobs, that's going to lead to increase in productivity in the business and also quality of output, both of which are clearly a good thing in terms of the overall business meeting its objectives. Also helps with staff retention. Again, because like we said before, employees are going to feel valued and therefore more likely to stay. So if you're continuing putting your people through training, and people, training costs money and employees know this. So if you feel like the business is investing time and money in you to develop you, that's more likely to make you feel valued by the business, and hence more likely that you're going to stay rather than leave and go somewhere else. From the employee's perspective, you feel valued as a business investing in you. As I just said, that final one kind of both ways. And also your job satisfaction increases as you become better at your work. And I think that's probably true of anyone in any job. Like, you're generally happier in your work if you feel that you're doing a good job. Sometimes you can go through a bit of a patch where you don't feel like you're doing a great job. And if you can kind of come out of that and feel you've improved, generally that's going to lead to greater job satisfaction for you. So that would definitely apply to most people. Disadvantages of training. One issue, and again, we look at training in more depth in the next key knowledge dot point, so you can kind of add more once you've covered that one as well. But for the time being, let's keep it nice and simple. It does involve often taking employees away from their work to receive this training. Okay, so you're taking people out of the workplace. There's a cost to doing that, reduced productivity, so on and so forth. So there's one disadvantage. And also training can be very, very expensive and very, very time consuming. Depends how it's done. And again, we look at that next. But yeah, it can be super expensive strategy. Look, at the end of the day, it's an investment. Okay, the business is spending the money. So hopefully they're going to get a return on that investment through greater productivity and greater quality of work done by the employees. But at the end of the day, you do have to find the money in the first place and pay for it. So yeah, there is an expense. From the employee's perspective, again, like some people are not interested in a career path, they just want to come to work, do the job, do their shift, go home. Again, some employees see no value in increasing their skills and knowledge. Okay, there are people out there just want to come to work, clock on, do their 8-hour shift, go home, not even think about it, come back the next day, do it again. So they're not going to see any value in increasing their skills and knowledge. So the investment that the business is making in those people could kind of be a waste of money and time. Short and long term for this one, definitely a great long-term motivator. Again, employees feeling valued by the business, they're going to feel happier at work, job satisfaction increases, they're more likely to stay. And also you get a kind of better, a more positive culture within your business if training is a focus. All of this stuff kind of coming together basically means that employees are going to be motivated in the long run. Also works as a short-term motivator though, because employees can be quickly motivated by the opportunity to upskill, to get better. So yeah, this one really, really kind of works both. Just be careful though, particularly if there's a lot of training going on, there might come a point where the employees see the training as kind of an inconvenience and then actually kind of acts as a demotivator. So if you're constantly pulling people out of the work to send them on a training course or whatever it might be, ultimately then it just becomes a bit of a drain. They see it as inconvenience and then they become demotivated by the training opportunities. So you need to get the balance right, I guess. Fourth one, support. So the fourth of the 5 strategies here. Now, what we're talking about here is basically the business providing employees with any type of assistance that improves their satisfaction in the workplace. So this one is kind of really broad. This can look like lots of different things. So different ways in which the business can achieve this. Regular check-ins on health and well-being. Look, health, particularly well-being, has become huge in the last few years. I guess even more so since COVID, but even before COVID, it was becoming a focus. Praise and encouragement for the employees in the workplace, just, yeah, good job, dude, good job. Some people really kind of, buy into that and that kind of pumps them up and keeps them motivated. Reward and recognition programs, again, lots of different things, ways that can look. But if people are rewarded and recognized amongst their peers in the workplace, that can be a real motivator for certain people. And accommodating for out of work obligations. So encouraging work-life balance. And again, definitely since COVID has become way bigger than what it was prior to COVID, with, many more work from home options available now than there used to be. Technology has kind of advanced to a place where that becomes much more possible for a lot of people now. And it just allows people, greater work-life balance. If you're living, out in the suburbs around the school and you're working in the city, you've got an hour, maybe an hour and a half even commute every day to work and then the same back. If you can work from home, there's 2 or 3 hours a day saved just on a commute, which, it's not wasted time anymore. You can do other things with that time. Spend time with your family, your hobbies, whatever you want to do. So yeah, by offering more flexible work options is another way to provide support to your employees. Advantages from a business perspective, again, it's going to assist with staff retention. If people feel supported in the workplace, if they feel they have this work-life balance, more likely to stay with you. Generally not an expensive strategy. There's not a huge upfront cost of doing this. If you think about those things that we just said on the previous screen, most of those, praise and encouragement doesn't cost anything to tell your team, good job. Working from home options doesn't necessarily, there might be some software that needs to install. You might need to provide people with laptops or something, but not a huge expense. And really, really can have a huge impact on the morale of the business, generally speaking, if people feel supported. Or if you take the flip side of that, and a business where people do not feel supported, and I've experienced plenty of those as well, actually it creates a really, really negative morale and culture within the business. So all of this stuff is really, really key these days. Most businesses are really focusing on this aspect of their kind of employee management. From the employee's perspective, you're going to feel valued, you're going to have a greater sense of job satisfaction, and your overall well-being improves. And these days, everything is all about well-being. So anything as a business you can do to improve the well-being of your employees has to be a really, really positive thing. Okay, disadvantages of support. Really, to be honest, not too many of these. Look, it does rely on management having really good interpersonal skills. This is definitely going to work better if you've got people that can relate to their employees and get on with them. A bit tougher for managers to do who don't have those skills. I guess it can be time consuming and draining. I mean, it's a bit of a negative view of it. But if you've got a big team and you have to constantly be doing this stuff, I guess you could argue that it could be a bit certainly time consuming, draining. Yeah, maybe. I guess it depends on the personality of the manager. And doesn't always have an immediate impact. It can take a bit of time for this support to kind of see the positive impacts of it, I guess you could argue. From the employee's perspective, negatives, none. I mean, how could you say that feeling supported at work in any way, shape or form could be negative? So I'd say there's nothing to talk about there. Short and long-term impact, definitely both, good for both, okay? Employees feeling their manager cares is going to help them when they're facing difficulties. That's hugely valuable, very powerful. And like I've just been talking about, really, really important issue in business in the 2020s as more and more employees are looking to work for businesses that care for their well-being. Big, big, big issue. Sanction. Not a huge amount to say about this one. This is all about basically penalising employees for poor performance. Okay, so if you think of the carrot and the stick, most of the other stuff, I mean, career advancement, particularly performance-related pay, stuff like that, that's all about dangling a carrot in front of people. This is all about hitting them with a stick. Okay, so if you're thinking in terms of a carrot and a stick analogy, this is the stick. So the idea here is it discourages employees from performing against a business's expectations and motivates them through fear, basically. So methods can include verbal or written warnings, removing privileges, reducing hours for casuals or part-timers. Now, you'd have to be very careful from a legal standpoint with part-timers, particularly if there's a number of hours written into their contract. But certainly for casuals, it's not too hard to reduce hours. There's no consequence or comeback for doing that. And ultimately dismissal. Okay, so you can get the idea here, trying to motivate people through fear. Now, from the business's perspective, advantages, look, it can put pressure on employees to conform and perform. I guess it can have an immediate impact, so it can work, in the short term, temporarily. Just if you need to really turn things around very, very quickly, it might kind of have that immediate impact as people kind of fear what will happen if they don't turn things around. And also, it's generally cost free. There's not a cost to putting this stuff into place. From the employee's perspective, I guess it can provide that immediate motivation that some employees might need. Some people basically need a bit of a kick up the behind to get going. Some people recognise that within themselves, some might not. But sometimes, people need a bit of a a jolt to kind of get them back on track again. It's kind of human nature for some people. So in that kind of situation, can work. Disadvantages of sanction, which are probably more extensive, creates a negative culture of fear. Like, generally speaking, on an ongoing basis, you do not want a culture of fear within your business. That's not a healthy culture. Yeah. If you do have that culture, in the long term, that's going to lead to staff absenteeism, people taking sickies because they don't want to come to work, which in a longer term will then lead to those employees leaving the business, which creates staff turnover. And then you have the cost and the time to replace those employees. So that leads to, when you have staff turnover, there's a cost to replacing people. From the employee's perspective, it reduces job satisfaction. Again, if you've got this negative culture of fear, people coming to work fearing what might happen if they don't perform well, people are not going to be so happy coming to work. Job satisfaction goes down. And also the relationship with your manager is going to be negatively impacted. If you're fearful constantly of what the manager's going to do if you don't perform at your best, you're not going to have the best relationship with your manager. And look, businesses, generally speaking, in the long run, work much more smoothly, efficiently, better if employees have a really good relationship with their manager. And this comes back to management styles. That's why, generally speaking, consultative and participative styles work better in the long run, because it's about that relationship with the managers with the employees, and the employees feeling valued by them. Okay, again, which is why, unless you're in a crisis or an emergency, you tend to avoid those task-focused styles such as autocratic and persuasive, because the relationship between the manager and the employees isn't really there. It kind of doesn't really need to be. So it all kind of comes back to that as well. Now, in terms of short and long, look, generally speaking, definitely not a long-term strategy. So if you're ever asked to suggest, you're given a business case scenario, and it's asking you to suggest long-term motivation strategies the business might use, I can't think of a scenario when sanction is going to be a good one to choose. Okay, really not good for the reasons we've already talked about. In the long term, employees are going to be demotivated due to this negative culture driven by fear. If penalties are commonly used, they might also actually become desensitized to them, so they actually stop providing any kind of motivation anyway. In the short term, kind of touched on, it can provide motivation to some employees, who want to avoid penalties or punishments, but very, very much a short term. Maybe if we're in an absolute crisis here, we really need to turn things around quickly, or the consequences could be severe. You might put stuff in place, a little bit like, moving from a task-focused management style to a people-focused management style in the long run, temporarily to a task focus just to get over a particular situation. It's kind of like that. So potentially in the short run, but definitely nothing more than that. Okay, so what you should now have in your notes, go back to what we had before. So for each of those 5 strategies, and mate, it's really important that you organize this all with nice subheadings so it's easy to follow. So an explanation of each of those 5 strategies. So now you should be able to give a little description about what each of those strategies are. And a couple of those strategies were a little bit more involved than others, but you need to be able to describe each of them. You then need to, give a little talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of each of those 5 strategies from both in perspectives, the business and the employees, and then that discussion around which ones are better to use in the long and the short term. So that's what you should now have. Make sure you've got all that again nice and organized and neat. And that is it for this particular key knowledge. I will see you in the video for the next one. Cheers for now.